Daf Yomi, Tractate, Sanhedrin, page 84a, top of the page, with the words Ve'arel basar lo yavo el migdashi esharteni, or uncircumcised in flesh may not enter my temple. Meaning no one who is uncircumcised in flesh may enter my temple. Ezekiel 44 verse 9. Onin minala nichtiv min hamigdash lo yitzeh v'lo yechalel es migdash Elohav. V'acher shlo yotzeh chilel. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive that it is prohibited for an acute mourner priest to perform the temple service? It is derived from a verse, as it is written with regard to a high priest whose mother or father died. And from the temple he shall not emerge, and he shall not desecrate the temple of his God. Leviticus 21:12. And from which it may be inferred that another, who is not a high priest, but an ordinary priest, who did not emerge from the temple, and who continued to perform the service, has desecrated the service. Amar le Rava de le Rove. Rav Arda said to Rava, let us derive it by means of a verbal analogy. Derive the meaning of the term of desecration written with regard to an acute mourner who performs a temple service from the term of desecration written with regard to an impure priest who partakes of truma. Just as there with regard to truma he is punished with death at the hand of heaven, so to here, with regard to the acute mourner who performs the temple service, he is punished with death at the hand of heaven. Mi kativ baby gufe, mi klal lekasi. Havidav rabba min haklal, v'chol davar rabba min haklal, indani noto bezegzer shave. Rava answers, is desecration written with regard to the matter of a priest who performs a temple service as an acute mourner itself? It is derived from that which is written with regard to the high priest by inference. Therefore, it is a matter that emerges from an inference, and the principle is any matter that emerges from an inference cannot be derived by means of a verbal analogy. A verbal analogy can be derived only when the matter is written explicitly. Yoshev min alan, Omer Rava Rab Nachmin, Omer Kro ki bo b'char Hashem Elokecha, mikol shevatecha lamon tesharis. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive that it is prohibited for a priest who is seated to perform the temple service? Rava says, that Rav Nachman says, the verse states, for him has the Lord chosen from among all your tribes to stand and minister in the name of the Lord. Deuteronomy 18:5. God states in the verse that I chose him for service while he is standing, but not for service while he is seated. Balmum, Rebbe Omer Misa Chachamim Omer Mehazorah. My time to the Rebbe, Tichtiv Ach Haparoiches Lo Yavoy V'Gomer. V'Yolev Chilu Mitzuruma Malahanam Misa Avkan Miso. The writer continues with regard to a blemished priest who performs the temple service. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says he is punished with death at the hand of heaven. And the rabbis say he is liable only for violating a prohibition. The Gemara elaborates, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? It is as it is written, but he shall not come into the curtain, and he shall not approach the altar as he has a blemish, that he desecrate not my sacred places. Leviticus 21:23. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi derives the punishment by means of a verbal analogy. The meaning of the term of desecration written with regard to a blemished priest who performs the temple service is derived from the term of desecration written with regard to an impure priest who partakes of truma. Just as there with regard to truma he is punished with death at the hand of heaven, so too here with regard to a blemished priest who performs the temple service he is punished with death at the hand of heaven. The Gemara challenges, and let us derive the punishment by means of a different verbal analogy. Derive the meaning of the term of desecration written with regard to a blemished priest who performs a temple service from the term of desecration written with regard to notar. Just as there, with regard to notar, he is punished with karet, so too here, with regard to a blemished priest who performs temple service, he is punished with kares. The Gemara explains that it's reasonable to say that he should have derived the punishment for a blemished priest who performs the temple service from Truma, as the Tana derives the bodily disqualification of a blemished priest from the bodily disqualification of the impure priest. The Gemara challenges, on the contrary, he should have derived the punishment for a blemished priest who performs the temple service from notar, as these are elements common to notar and a blemished priest who performs the temple service. Unlike Truma, both are cases involving sacrificial matters. Both involve matters performed inside the temple, and in both cases the disqualification of Pigul and the disqualification of notar are applicable. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi derives the halacha of a blemished priest who performs the temple service from the halacha of an impure priest who performs the temple service, due to the elements common to both. He derives the bodily disqualification of a blemished priest from the bodily disqualification of an impure priest who performs the temple service, and he derives the case of a blemished priest whose case involves sacrificial matters performed inside the temple, and the relevance of both Pigul and Notar from the case of an impure priest whose case involves sacrificial matters performed inside the temple, and the relevance of both Pigul and Notar. The Gemara asks, and the rabbis, what is the reason that they hold that he is liable only for violating a prohibition? It is, as the verse states, and die because of it, if they desecrate it. I am the Lord who sanctifies them. Leviticus 22, verse 9. From which it is derived, because of it, they receive death at the hand of heaven, but not in the case of a blemished priest. My time with the Rebbe. The writer continues, with regard to one who intentionally performed an action of misuse of consecrated property, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says he is punished with death at the hand of heaven, and the rabbis say he is liable only for violating a prohibition. The Gemara elaborates, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? Rabbi Abahu says he derives a verbal analogy, the meaning of the term of sin, written with regard to one who intentionally misuses consecrated property, see Leviticus 5:15, is derived from the term of sin written with regard to an impure priest who partakes of Truma, see Leviticus 22, verse 9. Just as there, with regard to Truma, the priest is punished with death at the hand of heaven, so too here, one who intentionally misuses consecrated property is punished with death at the hand of heaven. The Gemara explains, and the rabbis say, that the verse states with regard to Truma, because of it, they receive death at the hand of heaven, but not in the case of the intentional misuse of consecrated property. Zar shishimish b'mikdash, Tanya Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Nemer Khan v'hazar hakarev yumas, v'ne'emar ha'olam kol hakarev v'mishkan Hashem yamus. Ma'ala hala midei shemayim, avkan midei shemayim. The Gemara cites a dispute between the sages with regard to the punishment of a non-priest who performed the temple service. It is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Yishmael says, it is stated here, you and your sons with you shall keep your priesthood in everything that pertains to the altar, and any non-priest who approaches shall be put to death. Numbers 18, verse 7. And it is stated there, anyone who approaches the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Numbers 17:20. 28. Just as there are the references to death at the hand of heaven, so too here in the case of a non-priest who performs a temple service, the references to death at the hand of heaven. Rabbi Akiva Omer. Rabbi Akiva says, Nimmer kan v'azarkan yumas, v'nemmer halan v'Rabbi Ahu, o cholem ha'chalom ahu yumas. Ma'ala hal miskilo, av kan miskilo. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, ma'ala hal mechenek, av kan mechenek. Rabbi Akiva says that it is stated here, and any non-priest who approaches shall be put to death, yumat. And it is stated there, and that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, yumat. Deuteronomy 13 verse 6. Just as there, with regard to the prophet, he is executed by stoning, so to here a non-priest who performs a temple service is executed by stoning. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, just as there with regard to the prophet, he is executed by strangulation, so to here a non-priest who performs a temple service is executed by strangulation. But my kamiflegi Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Akiva savar danin yumat me yumat, ve'ein danin yumat me yamut. But Rabbi Shmuel Omer danin hedyot me hedyot, ve'ein danin hedyot me navi. Rabbi Akiva, kiven shehidech, ein lecha hedyot gadol mizeh. The Gemara asks with regard to what principle do Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva disagree. The Gemara answers, Rabbi Akiva holds, in the verbal analogy, one derives yumat from yumat, and one does not derive yumat from yamut. And Rabbi Ishmael holds, although the terms are not identical, one derives by means of a verbal analogy the halacha of any ordinary person from the halacha of an ordinary person, and one does not derive the halacha of an ordinary person from the halacha of a prophet. The Gemara asks him, what does Rabbi Akiva hold? Once the prophet incited others to idol worship, you have no greater example of an ordinary person than that. He is no longer the status of a prophet. Okay? Okay. But my kamiflegi. With what are they arguing? B'mai kamiflegi. With what? Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Beplukta de Rabbi Shimon b'Rabanan. Titania. Navi shehidiach b'skilo. Rabbi Shimon Omer b'chenek. Afanan tanan. Rabbi Akiva Omer b'chenek. The Gemara asks, with regard to what principles Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri disagree. The Gemara answers they disagree with regard to the issue that is the subject of the dispute of Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis. As it is taught in a Brayta, a prophet who incited others to idol worship is executed by stoning. Rabbi Shimon says he is executed by strangulation. The Gemara asks, didn't we learn in the Mishnah with regard to a prophet who incites others to idol worship that Rabbi Akiva says he is executed by strangulation, contrary to Rabbi Akiva's opinion cited in the Brayta? Trei Tanai veli with Rabbi Akiva. Mas Nisan Rabbi Shimon veli with Rabbi Akiva. Brayta v'Rabbanan veli with Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara answers, these are two Tanaim, and they disagree with regard to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Mishnah, which cites the opinion that Rabbi Akiva holds, that a prophet who incited others to idol worship is executed by strangulation, is citing the opinion of Rabbi Shimon in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was his preeminent disciple. The Brayta, which cites the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, holds that a prophet who incited others to idol worship is executed by stoning. Is citing the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Shimon, and they too hold in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. We shall return to you, God willing, Allah. This concludes the 9th chapter of Sanhedrin. To be continued with the 10th chapter of Sanhedrin on the next Amud.